This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke, home, safe and well from the Japanese capital, Tokyo, after a fascinating week exploring, understanding the game in Japan, attending club matches between the Kintetsu Liners and Toshiba, speaking to Will Genia there. Speaking to Glenn Delaney, coach of the Mitsubishi Dynaboars, Leslie McKenzie, the coach of the Japanese women's team, Ken Iwabuchi, the chairman of Japan Rugby. We made a couple of programs while we were up there, but Ewen McKenzie, I have to say, I have returned from Japan and it is the land of opportunity for rugby. There is so much going on up there, so much potential. It is now time for the world of rugby to reach out to Japan to support them as they grow the game.
Well, I think the performance on the weekend against Australia was helped everything you've just said. Add some good value on the field, and you've got yourself a good formula for ongoing investment and as you say, opportunity. But interest, we need to get more interest in there. I guess we need, by virtue of what you've been doing, need to understand more how it functions up there. It's clearly a different system, universities and the club system, and the whole thing is a different dynamic. Once you start to understand how it works, then it sort of makes sense. And we just need to get a bit more reporting around results and whatever, and get a bit more interest, because the teams have these sort of fantasy type names and whatever. They're all a bit dramatic sounding names, but I don't know who's in first and second division and whatever. That's sort of my level of knowledge. But I know all the personalities you're talking about, and there's a lot of good calibre people who have gone there. And there's obviously, as we saw on the weekend, some great talent, some great local talent. I mean, I saw some terrific moments in that Test match. I mean, that tackle by the Japanese hooker on Robertson, that's tackle of the year stuff. That was just unbelievable. But they were at it all night. The Japanese, they tackled well. They were in the right place. I actually sent a note to Eddie and said, what was the game plan? What was the defensive game plan? He said, we're just defending the ball. And they did. They got stuck in wherever the ball was. They were getting stuck in, and it was pretty impressive actually. I thought they, with a bit of luck, the result could have been the other way around. So well done to Australia to edge it out in difficult circumstances, but you've got to give credit to Japan. So that was a culmination of all of the things you're talking about, all the things that are going on off the field, culminating on with some really good competitive performance on the field.
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable Test match occasion. There were 41,000 people there at the Japan National Stadium on a pretty ordinary day, I'd have to say. Like, it rained pretty much throughout the whole of the game, so large parts of the crowd got soaking wet, but they enjoyed it. And it's a very knowledgeable crowd in Japan. They understand the game, they appreciate the game. And as Eddie said in the post-match press conference, they're coming to discover and understand their identity and the way that they want to follow their team. But certainly at full time, when the whistle went at full time, the Japanese crowd gave a fulsome ovation to their team. They were clearly, like everybody else, a bit disappointed that they didn't quite get there with the result, but very proud of the way that the Japanese team played.
Yeah, they do all the basics really well. And they had strung together multiple phases. There was just little moments where the ball went loose. I was going to say this to Eddie. I said the halfback was terrific, but he was almost too terrific. He was too fast, right? And so there was a couple of knock-ons where he was so eager to get the ball out of the back of the ruck. He banged the back of his player's leg with the ball and went forward, and so. Again, it took the pressure off Australia. I'd never said that about halfback ever in my life, but he was like too fast. So things like that just stymied them at the death at key moments where they looked like they were going to, get some sort of pay for their toil. It just stymied them, but they were really good in the fundamentals and tackling, as opposed to the defensive pattern. The actual tackling is a function of attitude and whatever. And they were like top notch, and Australia conversely, they were good. They had to be good. They had to be good to be able to stick with it, and they edged it out in the end. A couple of moments, but in the end, they were relying on close quarter. 2 metres out, pick and drive type tries. So they got that one nice try by fluke, but the rest was all sort of close quarter stuff. They sort of overpowered them in the end, but it wasn't easy. And they had 2 yellow cards in there as well, which didn't help them. So I know everyone's talked about Australia losing their second rowers, but Japan only had 2 guys off for 20 minutes total. So that's affording. So they did really well.
So interesting. I had a quick chat with Eddie after the press conference, and we were just discussing that it's really the opportunity for Japan to play more against the top teams, because once they learn how to play at that top level more frequently, they won't make those same mistakes. They will learn how to control the tempo, because, as you say, they just got a little bit jumpy at times because of not having that experience of being able to sit there and control the game.
In my opinion, and this is exactly the same, and I've talked about this on the show before, the inoculation, and I had the same problem at Super Rugby with the Crusaders. So how do you solve the problem? You try and play them as often as you can. So you're going to wear a permanent fixture in the trial matches and whatever to try and get more games against them so that you could get used to playing against them and understand and feel comfortable at that level. If I was Japan, I'd be banging on the Australian Rugby Union's door and trying to lock in a test every year in that, I don't know what the windows are going to be, but theoretically in that June window, trying to lock in a test match or something like that so that there's a game every year, and so they can test their wares against Australia. They're on the same time zone. I think it's perfect. It's only an hour, 2 difference really, so it's a perfect. You can get down there overnight without too much drama. And
it's an easy trip.
Yeah. So they've got to try. It's
a very easy trip
lock,
overnight.
Lock in there and don't let Australia turn it into a B fixture where they just get away with putting the B team out there. You've got to lock in and get a genuine test match, and it might be tough on the scoreboard a little bit, but that's the only way you're going to get that regular contact. And to be fair to Australia, they've been dropping in on Japan reasonably often, but they need to make that an annual fixture, I think. I think that's it's almost duty bound to try and do something like that, to try and help develop and open up a different market. And World Rugby should support that.
Yeah, well, there was reporting during the week, Phil Waugh saying that next year there will be 2 tests. There'll be a home and away tests, which the opportunity has been created by the New Zealand All Blacks tour of South Africa, the greatest rivalry tour. So next year the Rugby Championship is not going to be in its current form, and so that does free up some windows. So that, I don't think it's been formally announced. But it does look like that will be taking place. But also, it goes to this wider opportunity off the field and rugby has this great opportunity to play a role around some of the sort of geopolitical engagement between government to government, business to business, chambers of commerce to chambers of commerce. There's a real opportunity in these weeks leading up to big test matches to create those sort of business, cultural, government, political. And there was a big event at the Australian Embassy on the Friday night before the test match. So they're getting those things right. But I'm a bit with you that there really needs to be, to me, like a 10-year plan, a strategic plan, but a plan that covers everything from junior teams travelling regularly to Japan. The cultural experience is unique. It is such a different place, and it's such that cultural engagement that you always talk about in terms of the game and the experience that it gives you. But we should be looking at it all the way through schoolboys, schoolgirls, sub-district teams travelling up there. There are 300 community-based teams playing the game in Tokyo alone. And I know that they would love to have more games, but then all the way up through the political engagement, the cultural engagement, and really start to stitch the two nations together, because Japan it's the 4th largest economy in the world. It's a $4 trillion economy. And when we look at what our strengths are as a game, particularly in Australia, well, we have to look to Japan to an opportunity. When we look at our domestic competitors, the Rugby League and the AFL, they do a very, very good job in a very small market. Well, we can do a good job in our market, but then we can look to these other opportunities that they don't have. So sitting down and working it all, it shouldn't take too much to be able to stitch something together, but it needs that sort of 10-year horizon, in my view, to be able to turn it into something that would be valuable for Japan and Asian rugby more broadly, but also then for Australian rugby.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. It was one of the first places I toured as a schoolboy in '81. So, there's been rugby going on there for a long time without any sort of fanfare. Obviously, in the last 20, 30 years, since that time, there's been more high-profile players going there and whatever, and it's been probably seen from the externally as a bit of a superannuation type exercise, retirement sort of thing, whatever. But it's more than that, clearly, and we can see that in the performances. So, I think a multi-level thing. I mean, I talk about clubs touring, and things like that. Why can't clubs go up there, for instance? I'm sure that's what we did out of Victoria. I'm sure that's possible, and you'll find people who are willing to play. So, I think that there's a real opportunity there. The reality is that Super Rugby just gets talked about. It's almost like it's there because New Zealand can't find something else, and they're now looking at different things. That's what I feel. It used to be something, now it seems to be. So we need to sort of drive other things to try and fill the spaces, and that's clearly an opportunity there that no one else has taken up. We could take that up in a meaningful way, and I'm sure we'd get a good hearing from the Japanese Rugby Union if there's something where you could stitch that in. At different levels, you get a good hearing. They've got all the facilities, and they've got the interest and the passion. So they just need to be able to get some games in there. So the only question mark there is, as Eddie was talking about the other day, the availability of like university players and whatever. But maybe you can get an inroad in there as well. Australian universities, whatever, going up there and playing. Like there's other ways of doing that.
Oh, look, on Sunday afternoon, the university rugby was on the television live. And I think Japan would be a great place to do a World Universities competition where you have the best university team nominated from every country and make it every 3 years play it in Japan because the university game is so strong. But one of the things that caught my attention on the game day, there were 150 media accredited at the game. This is journalists and photographers, so that doesn't count all of the television people that go with it. And it was the post-match press conference was as big a media conference as you would attend. It was absolutely packed with Japanese media. Now, clearly I can't consume Japanese newspapers or online content because I can't read it, but there were so many people there, so many wire services there, and really just showing how important the Japanese team in rugby has become, particularly post the 2019 Rugby World Cup, post 2015, the Brighton Miracle. Rugby has really come to a place of significance inside Japan society, and they really are following the team strongly. But at the same time, how many Australian media, Ewen McKenzie, do you think attended the week leading up to and the game at the National Stadium? There were 150 accredited from.
Go back to my days, I'd probably say 3, 4, maybe a few.
Zero.
Zero. Is that right? Okay.
Zero. There were zero Australian media for the whole week.
Did they go to the game? Did they call the game from here?
No.
They called the game from here, did they?
Well, they call the game from here, and they attend the press conferences via Zoom. But you miss the whole show. You miss the whole trick. You miss the whole occasion if you don't go. So really,
I mean that's probably emblematic of the problem or the potential and the problem. So you've got a lot of things going on and no one's seeing it. So I think rugby union needs a mole up there. We can get online and talk more, so we can all become a bit more versed in what's going on on a week to week basis or game by game basis. So we sort of know a bit more about what's going on, a bit more knowledgeable. I think that's sort of
Well, I've made a number of contacts up there during the week who I have said I'm going to be staying in contact with. Glenn Delaney, the head coach of the Mitsubishi Dynaboars, lovely guy. I got to spend Saturday night at a place called Andy's Bar, which is this fantastic restaurant underneath one of the rail lines in the middle of Tokyo, and it's a great rugby bar smack in the middle of Tokyo. Actually, Carl Hoft was there, and he said to pass on his best regards to you as well.
I've played against him a few times. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. No, he said, because I was telling him about the podcast, he didn't know about it, and he said, Ewen McKenzie, oh, Ewen, say good day to Ewen for me.
Yeah, right.
But Tabai Matson was there, and a number of the other coaches from the...
Played against all of them,
all of the divisional teams up there, but there's a lot of quality up there. And Glenn was saying in the conversation I had with him on Rugby Unity that over the years, because he's been there for a few years now, he said that they're really starting to improve the quality of player. And exactly as you alluded to before, those players are now going up and playing international rugby, and the whole League One are right behind, seeing their players go up and get this opportunity to play at the national level and play and compete hard.
Well, they did, and I think, my sort of layman's, without any knowledge, impression is that they're sort of relied upon the international players that sort of have been there for a while to become Japanese players, and there's a little bit of that. But I was really impressed with the Japanese players. I talked about the halfback, the hooker, the front row. They're all terrific, in terms of their contributions. The fullback, they're all genuine sort of stars in their own right. So we just need to see them more often and playing against it. They were good. They stepped up, and so I think everyone thought it was going to be like the A game. Maybe it was going to be a point a minute, but I was watching the clock and I was watching the points, and that fell away real quick. But to fight through those 2 yellow card periods, and if you look at Australia, well, they scored 3 tries, 2 from in close. There was the one that the fluke try, which was the most glamorous try of the night in a way, that came off the back. They had their 12 in the sin bin. And so they had eight men on the scrum and one less in the back line. So that back line play, Eddie might correct me here, but the back line play that the back line execution that Australia used to score that try by fluke, was aided and assisted by the fact that the Japanese, the 12 was in the bin. So they were one short in terms of the back line. And then, the first try that the Australian captain scored, I was pulling my hair out. I knew why I stopped coaching, because I was watching the referee in the middle of the field. Australia, this is before that try, Australia went into the ruck in the middle of the field. Everyone was off their feet, and the referee penalised Japan for not rolling away. But the Australians are all, they all dove into the ruck. And then so they kick for touch, win the line out, they get within a metre, and then Japan gets the ball. Japan gets a penalty. They get the ball. They do one ruck, and he penalises them for going off their feet. And I'm going, hang on, are we watching the same game? No, off the feet, then off the feet, and then from that they score. The CDC scores, from pick and drive from the ruck. So, there's crucial sort of consistency there. I felt at that point in time. That's why I don't coach. Eddie's a better man than I, but they. I was saying before, Eddie, the Japanese, the tackling was sensational. Like the tackle on Robertson by your hooker, that was terrific. Like that was the best tackle of the year. So they did everything you would have wanted them to, except get a few more points, which could have easily happened.
Well, Eddie Jones, welcome to the program, and with the benefit of a few days looking back to the Tokyo National Stadium clash, you've had time to think about it. How are you right now as you sort of get ready to go to the UK for the next challenge, which is this weekend? But before we talk about that, looking backwards, how do you feel a couple of days on?
Well, I'm more worried about South Africa now. We've got South Africa that day.
Yeah, I get that.
We've had 2 training days. We fly tomorrow. So we're just trying to get the boys right for this week. But, yeah, certainly proud of their efforts. I thought they really tried to take the game to Australia and, we were one play away from winning. We weren't quite good enough at the end to execute. But, echoing Ewan's comments, we spoke before about how the referees give one random off their feet in attack in every game, just to have it so that they get ticked off by their coaches and by whatever they call themselves. And it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous in the game. When you see there was many other occurrences of it happening and the referee picks out one, and it doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth, but you got to suck it up and get on with it. And there's things we've got to improve in the game, as we've spoken about.
So how has the team recovered? It was a pretty willing sort of a match, and looking at the players as they left the ground, plenty of bumps and bruises and ice packs and other things. How are they as they prepare to travel to Europe?
Yeah, I think we made 200 tackles in the game. Yeah, for a Japanese side, which is normally a attack side, to make 200 tackles, and I think we had 97% success. They're a bit sore. We've lost the hooker that Ewan's talking about. He's normally our second choice hooker. Our first choice we lost during the PNC, and the second choice, showed that he could be as good as anything going around. He's got a real feel for the game, aggressive, powerful, low player. So we're going to miss him. So we've got a young bloke coming off the bench going to be playing his first cap against South Africa at Wembley. What an experience.
And about that, it's an interesting scheduling that you'll have to travel to play. So travel, get ready. How have you been preparing to get ready for that game this week? You've obviously known that it's been coming for some time, but what does your planning look like in terms of getting the team ready for what will be a very important match this weekend?
Yeah, well, we've done some forward planning, all the science about sleeping. We've tried to manage as much as possible. But, the one thing I've learned about these sort of situations, the most important thing is your attitude. I remember we did things like wear sunglasses, all the scientific things you're supposed to do. But, we'll do all those. But the big thing is the attitude of wanting to get out there and play, and I think we've got that in the team, and we'll train this afternoon. Training this afternoon's a little bit of an issue because my experience always with the day before a tour, most players deep down don't want to train. They want to, look after themselves. So, and we need to train well today. So that'll be a good challenge to see where we are. If we can train well today, we'll put ourselves in a good position to really compete in the South African game.
Yeah, you made the point at the press conference after the game on Saturday about the harmony and the alignment that you're observing inside the Japanese team at the moment, and clearly there would have been a lot of confidence taken out of the match at the weekend. Just how important is it that you get that piece right to be able to build a strong and competitive team over time? Because it's my experience has always been that if you've got a good, happy, harmonious team, that's a great foundation for high performance.
Yeah, I'm not so sure happy's the right word. I think whenever you've got a good team, there's something that binds them together. Sometimes it might be that they've grown up together, they're the same age, they've been through some experiences, or you've got a exceptional group of leaders, or there's something that ties them together that makes it a little bit stronger than it normally would. And, sometimes you can go about to try to create that, and sometimes it just happens. Like, coming to Japan last year, we had a real spread of players from different ages, and that didn't work. They weren't a collective group, so we've basically gone for youth, and obviously Michael Leach, it wouldn't matter if you're playing in Mars, Michael Leach would be in your team. it wouldn't matter whether he's 50, he'd still be in your team. Right. So he just adds. So we've got a young group of players. They get on well. They're different. They're certainly different than any other group I've had. And we try to treat them a little bit differently. But they seem to be gelling really well. And you just got to adapt your environment to help them grow.
It's probably the word's probably confidence, Eddie, in terms of like they're a confident group in each other. And so if I'm watching, I've obviously watched Japan play quite a few times now. So they can rely on certain things, good set piece, like good scrum, the sort of things that you can take for granted. They can almost rely. They just know it's not going to be maybe South Africa they'll go hard at your scrum for sure, but the scrum's been good. Like it's not something anyone talks about, but it just competes, and you get possession, and you can play from that. You can play set plays. So those sorts of things give you a background confidence that allows the players to go into the game going, okay, well, all we have to do is do the additional things, which is attitudinally based, but also specific plays pertinent to the game, because they're not worried about whether they're going to win the scrum or not. So, or the line out, they've got enough.
That's a good point.
You go in with the confidence, and we saw that. I just said before you came on about the attitude showing up in the tackling, not in the defence pattern, but in the tackling. And that's like you can now bank that and take that into the next game. They set a standard for themselves so they can take that into the next game as players. But obviously, as a coach, you can say, well, you can't do less than that. You've already shown me what you can do. So that's the standard for next week, So you'll need a bit of that. I'd be interesting to see who Rassi picks in his team, whether he'll go the B route or whatever they do with in terms of selections. But it's all going to be a good opportunity for Japan.
All right. Well, listen, we will talk very soon about the matches ahead of us in Europe this weekend as we enter November, when there is rugby being played all over Europe. But we will come to the comments and the questions of the third voice before we do that. And this was from Bitzer993 on Spotify, and clearly it was on Saturday ahead of that test match where Bitzer said, give them hell today, Eddie. And they certainly did this. Now, Trilly's back again. Another great pod, lads. And thank you for asking Eddie the question. Can you ask Eddie what is his favourite Japanese food? Eddie, what is your favourite Japanese food?
Rice.
No. Enjoy
sashimi.
I love sashimi. There's nothing nicer in Japan than fresh sashimi. But there's a whole range of dishes. I love also just playing the Japanese curry, which is a bit different than curry around the rest of the world. Enjoy that.
Yep, very good. And didn't I enjoy some good food when I was up in Tokyo last week? And really, what a great city to enjoy. So, Ewen from Trilly, can you ask Ewen, which is his most enjoyable team to coach and why?
Probably the Reds for the reason that Eddie just spoke about. You get a point where there's a confidence that the group has, so then you can approach a game. So you're not thinking about whether you're good enough. It's just a matter of whether you get your tactics and that right for the game. And that's sort of, there's a trust between the coaching group and the playing group and whatever. So then they go out, they feel like they can express themselves. And we were able to do that in 2011 and change it up. So probably the 2011 team, and they weren't individually the best players. Like some of them like Bo Robinson and Rod Davies, they got a test cap out of it based on their performance. They didn't survive along at the test level, but they got a go, which is probably maybe more than what they thought they would have done. But that was on the back of being in a cohesive team. So that was probably the most enjoyable coaching experiences. There's plenty of teams I enjoyed being in.
Okay. Truly also asks, who would win a game of chess between you and Eddie Jones?
Me.
I think it's me, mate.
I would, mate. I was the under 12. I was the under 12. I came third in the under 12 Victorian Championships in chess. I was good in my day. Under 12, and I dropped off. Still play on my phone though.
Eddie Jones, do you play chess?
No.
Not bright enough, mate. I'm drafts.
No, exactly. So that's right. You and McKenzie, who beat you? Who was the champion in the under 12?
Can't remember.
Victoria?
I came third. I can't remember. I came third, under 12. Yeah.
When did you start playing chess? When did you learn it?
Oh, mate, I was in a chess club out in the suburbs of Melbourne. I was like 8, I think I was. I was playing in this. I was the youngest member of the chess club. I played for a while and then I just dropped off, So, like everything else, I started playing rugby, and that was the end of chess.
Pemby, just on that chess, reminds me of the England side.
Yeah.
Of all the players in the England side, who do you think was the best chess player in that era?
Manu Tuolangi.
How did you know that? That's pretty sharp. He absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And he was the most physical, non-strategic player you've ever seen.
Wow.
No, but they used to England led the way in the creation of the content. Remember, you used to have those videos every week. And they used to just produce them every week. You just could not stop watching them. They were so beautifully put together. And anyway, a constant theme throughout, well, particularly a couple of the years there was Manu sort of tidying everyone one up. I remember Johnny May used to always sort of challenge him, but Manu was too good for Johnny.
I was going to say, who were the other players? Who was he playing against? They might have been nonsense. You never know.
Yeah, Johnny
May was one.
Johnny May loved it.
Yeah.
We had to sometimes tell Manu to give him a few games just to keep Johnny's confidence up.
It's all about
there
confidence.
You go. So, couple more. Just focusing on individual tiers, not the whole system. Which country's school system would you say is the best in the world in terms of developing players? Which is the school system which is developing the best players? You and McKenzie.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would have said South Africa, maybe. I don't know. I don't know the English system. I just don't know the systems, to be honest. I would have thought South Africa, it's a big deal. New Zealand's still a big deal, but I don't know that carries through in New Zealand. But I think in South Africa, it might still generate a fair bit of talent, but I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, well, you certainly see it on YouTube a lot, the South Africans. Eddie Jones, which school system have you observed?
Ewan's right. South Africa has got a brilliant rugby school system. They have Craven Week where they have A, B, C division, where all the best talent plays in national comp. The games are televised on television, and they put a lot of the private schools, because it's such a big part of the society there. It's a prestigious part of the curriculum. But Ireland, for a small country, Ireland do fantastically well. They say that Leinster Academy is made up of 16 private schools, which then get assistance from Leinster to run their programs and equip their gyms. And you see what Ireland's have done over the last period of time.
What about England?
Yeah.
It's just too many schools. Is it cohesive?
England's pretty strong, mate, but there's a two-tiered system there. Obviously the public schools, or the private schools as we call them in Australia, are prestigious and run good programs. And then the rest of the schools play in like a different league, and they actually have two national teams, one for the public schools and one for the rest of the schools. So, to me, that doesn't seem as how it should be.
Yeah.
Everyone should be on an equal footing.
And MRVN also asked, which of the club systems do you believe is the best as the producer of talent for the national teams? Which club system do you think is the best in the world, Eddie Jones?
Randwick.
Oh,
no, well, I think the Australian club system's pretty strong, mate. The Australian club system's pretty strong. I think that's where possibly Australia's missed a beat in not supporting that more. That's the foundation of Australian rugby. You've got a core of public schools in Brisbane and Sydney that are really important, but then the club system was able to capture the rest of the talent because those players who didn't play in the public school system.
Yeah.
And it was a good earthy competition and produced good players. And I still think that that could be a route for Australia to develop their talent a little bit better.
Ewen McKenzie, your thoughts?
Well, I'm familiar with the Australian system, so I agree with Eddie, but I would have thought if you just said, like, I don't know, the Premiership in the Prem in England, it obviously gives direct feeding players directly into the English team, I suppose. So that, for me, seems to be a pretty strong, and they make the players play in the Premiership to be eligible. So I think they keep it pretty tight. And other countries have tried doing that. Ireland did that for a long time in terms of locking their players in with income tax advantages and whatever by staying and playing in Ireland rather than going to France or whatever for bigger money. I would have thought the Premiership is a bigger club competition, but clearly that's probably the one that sticks in my head. Everyone else is using it. Everyone else is a bit more. Everyone else is provincial,
Yeah. So thank you to you, the third voice. Please keep those comments and questions coming. We always appreciate that, and certainly it does add value to the program. Now, we are on the doorstep of a huge month of rugby in Europe. So this week alone, we have the Barbarians taking on the New Zealand 15 at the Brentford Stadium in London. We have South Africa versus Japan, and we have Australia versus England. All of those three matches being played in London. We have Munster playing Argentina A, Scotland versus the USA, and Ireland playing New Zealand in Chicago. But there are also Rugby Europe trophy matches being played this weekend. Croatia plays Denmark and Sweden plays Lithuania. So that is happening on the European continent and in the UK this weekend. Ewen McKenzie, you look at all of those fixtures that are taking place, there's a huge amount of rugby ahead. But if we just look at this weekend, which of those matches sort of stands out to you for the most appeal?
I'll be watching South Africa, Japan. I'll be watching because now I've been watching Japan. I feel an affinity there. I feel closer talking to Eddie about it. So you'll take an interest. And obviously we've been studying South Africa in recent months. So that and obviously the Australian game, they're the two things. I was going to ask Eddie, I mean, now with all those teams in London, where have they got you bunkered up? Where are they bunkering you up in? Where are you staying in London? I mean, I see the Wallabies are at Lansbury. Where have they got you ensconced? Did you get to choose, or?
We did, yeah, because we're in the north of London because of Wembley. So we had a choice of staying in Wembley or we're going to stay out near St Albans at Sopwell, an old hotel called Sopwell House. Beautiful old sort of English-style hotel with nice recovery facilities. So be a good place to get ready for the game.
So with that, Ewen McKenzie, your thoughts about South Africa versus Japan? And we will know the teams later in the week and we'll be able to talk about the teams in more detail, but your sort of preliminary view and assessment.
I think South Africa will just try and steamroll. There won't be any change in their game plan. They'll try and steamroll. They'll try and use maybe a bit of high ball catching. They'll be testing Japan out that way and obviously testing their scrum on attack and defence and trying to put pressure on the line. So they'll do all the things you'd expect and then they'll just run very direct and try and bulldoze them, I would have thought. It'll depend on who Rassie picks, whether he puts his like a combination team out there or his second team or whatever, I don't know. So that'll be probably tell you more, but I think the tactics will be the same. So the assignment for Japan is going to be similar. You're going to have to tackle well and then obviously be precise in attack, which, I thought they played really well in attack. They just let themselves down at that critical last moment. I said it before you came online, Eddie. I've never said it before about a halfback, but your halfback was too fast, too enthusiastic. He made a couple of errors just by being too keen to get the ball and get the ball moving. He was terrific at it, but we had a couple of errors that just sort of stymied the momentum. So just getting sort of control in those couple of in those key playmaking areas, just control the tempo of the game. And that, I think there's some other opportunities up tempo. There's some quick line-out opportunities too, just to keep the tempo of the game up, which I think always helps against South Africa. They'll be looking for set piece. So if you don't give them set piece opportunity, they've got to keep moving. Don't let the game stop too much. That doesn't help South Africa. They like to be point to point and impose themselves. So they're things that I'd be thinking about, but I'm not going to tell Eddie what to do. But just some ideas anyway.
So, Eddie Jones, what can you tell us about the way that you've prepared your team this week? As Ewen McKenzie says, you know what's coming. Are you ready?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any secret, when you're playing against South Africa, and they don't make it a secret, mate. They get 30 metres from your line, two forwards come around the same way, and you know it's coming. You just got to be good enough to stop it, and you got to be able to neutralise the high ball. And if you can stop those two parts of the game, we'll give yourselves a chance to win the game. And then, as Ewan said, when you get possession, you got to be accurate, you got to be sharp, and you got to, because they give you opportunities to attack. They play a half pitch defence where the winger can come in from the 15 metres to close at the near post. So you either got to try to play through that, which is one way, or you've got to play over it, or you can, like New Zealand traditionally do, try to play around it, which is fraught with high risk and little return. So we've tried to find a way to break that down, and we'll give it a red hot go.
I thought Australia did a good job of playing around them, and that was generally when O'Connor was on the field. And he was just able to do those little Mark Ella wraparounds where you just get the double touch and you got around that rushing defence. So you got to be good enough and accurate enough in your passing. I've seen, I think Japan's got that capacity. So playing around is an option. But going through them is going to be is attritional. So we'll see who they pick. But I'm kind of hoping it's going to be like the weekend we've just had, that they pick a bunch of guys who are going to be focused on trying to impress Rassie and might hopefully be a little bit individualistic and get caught up in the opportunity to impress more so than the cohesion side of it. It'll be a good test of where they're up to in their teamwork if they've got a bunch of guys who are trying to push into the main team. So the selections will be critical.
All right, so to the next of the very big games, England versus Australia. Eddie Jones, you've coached both teams. You're familiar with both teams. What's your assessment of that particular contest at Twickenham on Saturday?
Well, I think if you look at both teams, they're probably about 2 or 3 years into their development cycle. England's reformed under Steve Borthwick. He's brought some good young players in. He's got some good talent coming through. He's worked out the senior players he wants to keep, and they're increasingly getting more consistent. They play a high kicking game, and their problem has been not their kicking, but then their ability to score off the kicking. They struggle to score points. So if they can find a way to be a little bit more spontaneous and cohesive, which seems the opposite, off their turnover ball, then they'll start developing even more. Australia's, I think, at an interesting stage where they've got a team that fights really hard and can play a certain style, but they'll need to be able to find ways to score more points, and that's how they can utilise Sawali out wide and Jorgensen out wide and get them with opportunities one-on-one to take on defenders, which is not easy to do these days. But I think that's the big challenge for them. So I see it being a very, very tight, close game, not much in it, high kicking from England. Whoever wins the aerial contest will go a long way to win the game.
So the speculation at the moment is that George Ford may be selected at 10 ahead of Finn Smith. If you were coach, who would you play for this particular match?
George, you know what you're going to get with George. He's a very, very good, competent Test 10. He's played a number of tests and he's done really well. Is Finn Smith going to be better than him? And that's the decision that Steve's got to make. If he thinks Finn Smith's going to be better than him, he's got to start playing him because, the World Cup's not far away and you want him to go in the World Cup with 20 or 30 tests under his game. It's like the comment Ewen said, when you're looking at your 9s and 10s, their ability to make good decisions, when to speed up the game, when to slow down the game is crucial to win big test matches. And you only learn that, you can't sit down the computer and go through the coach with that. You've got to play games, you've got to experience the tough periods, you've got to learn when it is time to go. And, so that's a crucial selection decision for Steve to make.
Mm. All right, Ewen McKenzie, your assessment of England versus Australia.
Yeah, I agree with everything Eddie said. I think the selection of 10 is crucial to how England will play and the dynamics there and what skill sets is available, and particularly in the phase side of it. So forward plays, I don't think he's not as interesting a player or creative a player in terms of phase side of it, but he can certainly conduct the game and he can position and play a field position game, whatever, and he can put pressure with his boot. So that's important. They've also lost, Joe Marler and Dan Cole. Some of those experienced guys have been relying on off the bench. They don't have those, so they're those guys anymore. So they're bringing younger guys through off the bench. So there's some new talent there, which is good. You've got to do that for the World Cup, so you've got to bring guys on. So there's a little bit of change there, but there's still a core of really good players there. And I agree on the Australian side. The thing that probably interests me was that Australia looked a bit short of match practice. And I know that there was a lot of talk prior to the Japanese game about, the top players are fatigued and whatever, and therefore resting players and rotating. But they looked short of just genuine game time. And that was always a worry when I was coaching about how long, when they last had their sort of big hit out. So there's a lot of guys now, because by virtue of the changes that they made in the last test, there's a lot of guys going in there for their first game after a pretty reasonable amount of time. And you can't replicate, you can try and replicate that in training, but it's not the same. And so Australia, the risk for Australia there is just cohesion, timing, and just the bumps and that of a real hard test match on foreign territory. That's a real challenge there. So if England can get stuck in, they'll put a bit of pressure on early. But as we know, Australia's resilient, and they'll tough that out and see where it ends up. But I think it's a really intriguing test match. Australia's got to fill a couple of voids. Well,
who wins?
Oh, obviously, I'd like to see Australia win. I think that's entirely possible with the X factor they've got. But England's brought a bit of X factor in, so we'll see who they pick. Again, 10 is the crucial thing. That'll tell you about the mindset for England, I think. So that'll probably tell you something. But I think it'll be a tight game. They might rely on forwards boot in the end.
Scotland versus USA. Eddie Jones, you've played recently against the USA in the Pacific Nations Cup. How big a gap is there likely to be between Scotland and the USA?
Oh, I'd say 50 points, mate.
Yeah, right.
Without trying to exaggerate, I think there's a huge gap there. Scotland have got the benefit of their players have played probably 8 or 10 games for their clubs, their provinces. They'll be in really good condition. Playing at home, USA, they had a very serious prep for the PNC. They had a 6-week lead up into the PNC, prepared really hard for that, qualified for the World Cup. So they'd be pleased with that, but there's a gap to go before you're playing against the 5th and 6th side in the world, 7th side in the world. So they might struggle there.
And the final of the big matches being played in Chicago at the Soldiers Field, likely to be a capacity crowd. A big week in the build-up with conferences on. and other things happening away from the field of play, which I like, and I love to see those things happening. Ireland post the Lions tour, New Zealand post the Rugby Championship. Ewen McKenzie, your first preliminary thoughts. We don't know either side that's been selected, but what are your thoughts about, first of all, playing a game like this in Chicago, and secondly, what might we see?
Well, I think we're talking about the Australia-Japan connection on a long-term basis. I think the Chicago shindig's been on for a little while now. They've done a couple. This might be the third time. I might be wrong, but I think they've been going and playing against each other in America on a number of occasions. So they're trying to make something out of it. It's obviously there's some corporate aspects to that, but in the end, it's a test match and it'll go down in the record book. So I'm interested to see where Ireland's at. And I only base that on the fact that Leinster of late have been coming up a bit short. They've got a fairly substantial number of the Irish players, and they've been coming up a little bit short provincially in the big games. So I'm sort of wondering where they're at. They've had a really good team, what we talked about, a really good, confident team, and they were able to etch out key victories and the like. But I just don't know if they're a team on the rise still, or whether they're at the top of the mountain, or where they are exactly. So this will be a good test to see where Ireland's at, and then because they've had some success against New Zealand of late, and New Zealand the same. They're coming off 2 test wins against Australia. They'll be looking to be consistent and trying to get a bit more out of their squad. The squad's it's a conservative squad. They didn't sort of go for too many surprises around the edges of the All Black squad, so it's a known quantity. So that'll help in terms of analysis for Ireland. So I probably think I'm probably tipping the All Blacks in that one, and when in doubt, I'll tip the All Blacks. But I'm really interested to see where Ireland's up to as a group. Whether they're at the top of the mountain yet, or still going up, or going down the other side.
Eddie Jones, where are they for you? Where does Ireland sit on the top of that mountain a couple of years out from the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia?
I was in Dublin for a recce tour just before. I was walking through the street and who did I run into? Andy Farrell. So we had a quick chat. I coached him at Sarries. And then they've got because they've got so many in the Lions, their Lions players have started late, so they haven't had much club time, and then they basically go to Ireland for a 10-day prep, and that's all they got behind them. So I think they might be a bit short of match preparation. New Zealand have been hardened by the Rugby Championship, and I think for this game, I think New Zealand should win, and should win it pretty well. How are Ireland travelling generally? Well, I think there's no doubt that they're coming off their peak. Can they bring through some new young talent to get them up again? That's going to be the challenge for Andy over the next 18 months. What is out there in Ireland, and can he bring them through quick enough to adapt to Test rugby? New Zealand, as Ewan said, have been a bit here and a bit there. They still don't seem like they actually are too sure what their best team is, or what roles they want for the players in the team. That seems a little bit all over the shop. And this will be a tour where they can work it out, because they're going to be tested on this tour.
All right, so that is the major test matches, and I won't hold you, either of you, to an assessment of Croatia versus Denmark and Sweden versus Lithuania, which will take place in Trelleborg in Sweden. But on the Rugby Unity podcast, we are going to talk about these divisions of European rugby, because, it's part of our story. And we have one story, and we have the top of our story. But that second-tier Rugby Europe trophy, Czechia, Croatia, Poland, Denmark, Lithuania and Sweden. I think Poland are looking good to go through to the Rugby Europe Championship, which takes place in February and March of next year. And the teams in that competition, Belgium, Georgia, Germany, the Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, Spain, and Switzerland. And I think this, again, is one of our great strengths of our game, that we really need to tell the full story and not just finish at the top end of the game, such that we can learn more about the first tier, the second tier. And then in Europe, there is the conference, which is another 20-odd teams that sits below that Rugby Europe trophy. So in the weeks, months and years ahead here at Rugby Unity, Eddie Jones, in your time when you were in Europe, did you get much exposure to those Rugby Europe tournaments, be it the championship, the trophy, or the conference?
Only there's a young English guy, Alex Laybourne. He actually coaches Sweden. So we've had a few chats together. We meet up regularly. Good young fellow who wants to coach well. And guess what his theme is for his team?
What?
Oh,
ABBA.
ABBA.
The Swedish. So he's come up with this sort of this way of playing the game. I don't know, a dancing queen, whatever. He's done really well there. He's done really well because they were down in third division, and I know they had a good win against Croatia. He sent me an email last week. So I've got a bit of interest in them. Not that I was that greatly in there, but it's good to see a young guy doing well.
What about in your time?
I'm going to go now, boys.
Okay,
Cheers.
we'll see you later, Eddie Jones, and we'll speak to you when you arrive in Europe. So thank you very much. And Ewen McKenzie, your time in Europe, did you get exposed to these tournaments? Because rugby is played everywhere, and I think it's time that we really started to tell the whole story, just as you were saying earlier about Japan, is that we don't know enough about what's going on in Japan, and certainly Rugby Unity will continue to do that. But in your time in Europe, when you were coaching over there, did you get much exposure to the various divisions of European rugby?
Not a lot, because you're sort of busy every weekend. It's sort of not like there was a lot of time to do that. I had mates, Australian guys who were playing in the Dutch league and ended up playing for the Netherlands and whatever in teams, so that these guys that were over there working as bankers and whatever, they were able to play for their different countries. So I did meet some people along the way that were playing international football for their respective places they were living, and we obviously played a test in Madrid against Spain as the Wallabies when we were coaching. So we got down there. So that was some time back now, but so we a little bit, but I think we got to do more to try and unearth all of that and get the structure of it all and get the promotion relegation understanding of it all sort of out in the open, so we sort of get to know how it works, because I'm learning myself.
Yeah, it's one of our greatest strengths, and I don't think we do enough about it, and that integration of our sport, the North and the South, but even now in Europe with all this rugby going on, certainly here at Rugby Unity, we will be doing our bit to report as much about all of the rugby there, not just the top line matches that will be played, but certainly there will be a huge amount of rugby played over the next month. And if you want to stay on top of it all, please dial in here at Rugby Unity. We'll be turning up twice a week to talk about the game, and certainly look forward to your contributions from the third voice about what your views are about perhaps the Rugby Europe Trophy, the Rugby Europe Conference, the Rugby Europe Championship, and indeed all of the top test matches that will take place as well. So a big thanks to all of you for coming back once again, and a big thanks to Ewen McKenzie and Eddie Jones for sharing their time with us today. Please, a like, a subscribe, a share, a comment. It all helps us to be found, and our audience continues to grow, and we are very grateful for that support. So we'll be back again later in the week, but for the moment, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.